EE World. I'm Senior Technical Editor Martin Rowe. What you're looking at behind me is what used to be an HP8112A 50 megahertz pulse generator. I bought it at a flea market for $20 just to take it apart, which as you can see is what I did. This unit was built roughly around 1987, as best I can tell. And it certainly is a case of they don't make them like they used to. For one thing, if you notice the boards behind me, they all have through-hole parts. And you know what the great thing about through-hole parts is? You can read the print on them without a magnifying glass. So we're going to take a look at this a little closer, and we'll look at the parts and see how it was built. But the first thing I noticed was there is so much metal in here. Look at this. This actually is the frame for the rear panel, which is here. And you can see there's power and a fuse and a GPIB connector, and this open space here is for the fan. And these parts over here, these are the side panels. And there are a lot of screws that it took to hold this thing together, and there's a cup back there behind the circuit board that's full of screws. There's very little plastic in here. As you saw, there was a lot of metal. There's all this metal over here too. And the only plastic you find on this are some of the sockets, the connectors. On the outside, there's only one piece of plastic, and that's this one right here. And this goes over the front. It actually fit over the front panel, and it was there just to hide the screws. The only other piece of plastic, separate piece of plastic that I found is this. And what this does is it goes right here, and it connects from the front panel so that when you push the power button, there's the switch. There's the switch, power switch right back there. So let's look here. Here's the front panel, and it is attached to the main board back here. It's attached to the main board, and what you see here, here's the power section back here. Up here we have some analog components. There's 3 sockets that were not populated, and you can see there's some cabling that runs from the front panel to the back. This pulse generator was really built for serviceability, and I'm focused in on this. This is the underside of the case, the cover, and as you can see, there's quite a few things like this. It tells you where there's some pots over here. There's a minus 15 volt, minus 23, plus 23, and plus 15, and you can see that it tells you really where the adjustments are. So let's start with the front panel. It's actually 2 boards. They actually do. There's a connector over here that's they connect together. It's actually 2 connectors. The front board just switches, just push button switches, nothing else, and a cable. The daughter board has got the display. Actually goes this way. It's got the display, and it's got 4 rocker switches to control it. So this is the main board. Got the layout here from the service manual. Here's the main power switch. Here's a diode bridge for the AC mains. Got your power supply here, and over here the transformer would fit in this section. Over here we've got some linear regulators and some power transistors, and there's actually there's some little bit of heat sink that went through here, actually connected all these together, and then went over this section, and then there was a heat sink which actually fit something like that. This is the pulse shaping section over here, and what it's got is there's a pulse shaper here and here, and these parts which are missing. Somebody took them off. This one's actually a VCO. It's for the period generator. This is a delay generator. And this is the width generator. And there's some logic that goes around it, all 7400 series logic around it, and some discrete components. So this is the control board. It's got these AD analog devices, DACs on them, and we know that because we can see it on the schematic. They are not marked with the analog devices part number, but they are HP7512A. There is an analog devices logo on the chip, but then other than that, it's got the HP part number on the package, which thankfully I can read without a magnifying glass. I've got some amplifiers over here, and you can see there's lots of adjustments. So this requires a lot of factory calibration and probably calibration from time to time with all of these mechanical pots. They're going to drift from temperature, from humidity, from being moved, perhaps. So some of these parts, some of this analog here, these are current sources. This says up current, down current, amplitude control. We've also got over here. Here's some more analog over here. We've got some power. We've got some transistors over here. This says blocking FF, auto load, and high byte burst counter, burst number acceptors, low byte burst, load burst circuit. And here we've got some more amplifiers, and there's a lot you can see over here. There's a lot of pots shown in the schematic. That's these over here, and these are coming from this. So this is going to come from, there's a bus over here, and then these are the DACs, and then from here we've got these amplifiers that ultimately end up on the main board, which then go to the front panel. So here's the processor board. You've got a Motorola 6802 processor on here. We found that from the schematic. This board, this chip over here is a GPIB controller, or HPIB controller as it was called in those days, and some logic, and this goes out to the GPIB connector on the rear panel. Now, what's different if you look at this layout is different than the board. You can see here there's 5 chips, and these are obviously ROM chips. Over here, there's only 2. And I don't know whether the board which came first, the layout here from the service manual or the board itself. That's something we just don't know. You also notice there's another chip over here that's missing. It looks like a Hitachi chip. It might be it might be a RAM chip. So we don't quite know what we've got here. What we do know is over here, this is an intercell. It's a display driver. And, some digital logic, a little bit of power supply, a little bit of power over here. We've got a battery over there. It's probably the backup battery. Some more logic over here. So that's the main processor board. And you can actually see some traces in here. This is a 4-layer board, I believe, and you can see some of the traces running on the inside. As it turns out, I'm not the only one to have gotten inside this unit. How do I know? Well, here's the fan, and what we've got here is somebody was playing around. There's obviously some not quite professional soldering going on here. This is a 7812 regulator. So somebody was trying to either get the fan working or get it under constant voltage. We don't know. It's just sitting here with what is obviously a rather amateurish soldering job. Nothing that HP would ever let out of the factory like that. That completes our tour of the HP8112A 50 megahertz pulse generator. I hope you enjoyed having a look inside. For EE World, I'm Martin Rowe. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to the next teardown.